let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our 2026 With Life Fellowship info session. Today we are going to talk about this amazing program and share quite a bit of information with you. We're also recording this session, and so in the next couple of days you will also receive a link to this recording via email so that you can review any information that we cover today. So before I jump in and start talking a bunch, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ryan, who's going to walk us through a high-level overview of the fellowship and our agenda today. And then we'll learn a little bit more about what is coming next.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. So as you can see here, this is the purpose of the With Life Fellowship. And it has been an exciting handful of years where we have had this program. Essentially, the fellowship gives individuals opportunity to come alongside both In Rhythm and Capital Institute for a full year through the With Life programming, to go through all of our courses, participate in all of those, and then have opportunity to really network and be able to go kind of on a deeper dive on a monthly basis with those who are fellows and begin to kind of chart out all that you're learning and be able to apply that in very meaningful ways in your work, and have that connection that goes far beyond the fellowship itself.
Thank you, Ryan. So today we are going to, you'll learn a little bit more about me and Ryan, who are the facilitators for the 2026 Fellowship Program. We'll give a little bit of an overview about With Life and sort of what it is and how it works and what's In Rhythm and what's Capital Institute. And you'll learn a little bit about our organizations and the programming that we offer. You'll also learn about some of the work that we're doing in the world and some of the different ways that our work expresses itself, as well as our approach. And then we'll talk about the program overview and kind of what you can expect in terms of the curriculum and courses and programs and offerings. And you will be, I'm very excited to hear from some of our current fellows. So you'll get a chance to hear from our current fellows and sort of how this program has been meaningful to them. And then, of course, we will leave time at the end for your questions after we give you some details about how you can apply and sort of how to get started on this fellowship journey. Does anyone have any questions before we jump into our agenda? Okay. So we'll start just with some brief introductions so you know who's talking to you. So my name is Natalie Masters, and I am the Director of Platform and Learning here at In Rhythm. And I lead the efforts on the With Life platform. So to give you just a little bit of a sense of that, In Rhythm is an organization that focuses on bringing a living systems approach to organizational design, leadership, management, and business. And Capital Institute is a global think tank bringing regenerative economics to the world. And so In Rhythm and Capital Institute came together to form the With Life community learning platform. And that's really where I sit, is holding the space for all of the courses and programs and offerings, including the fellowship and all the other things that we're going to talk about today. And my background is really in learning experience design, teaching, training, instruction, curriculum. I've been working in education in some form or fashion for my whole life, really. And I've been here with the In Rhythm team for a couple of years now. And so my role is really to facilitate the courses and programs and offerings that are part of this program, as well as to facilitate the leadership courses and design courses that In Rhythm offers. So that's kind of in a nutshell, very briefly, what I do. And I'll hand it over to Ryan to introduce himself and his role in the fellowship as well.
I'm Ryan, and I work as an organizational design consultant for In Rhythm. As Natalie was talking about, we have our coursework, and then we also have what we call our demonstration work, where we actually take the frameworks and ideas that you are exposed to through all of our programs and we implement them in organizations. We have a couple different ways we do that. Some of the work is shorter term scoped work, more like traditional consulting to help enable on kind of a project by project basis some of this framing to show up in organizations. And then we also come alongside operational partners in fractional ways. So most of my work is working fractionally within a couple of different organizations where I have an actual position in that company and get an opportunity to, in a meaningful way, roll out this framing of how we design, manager, and monitor in light of living systems. So most of my work involves helping organizations and individuals get clear on where they want to go and think through the behaviors and structures necessary to do that in cooperation with living systems patterns.
So Ryan and I will be co-facilitators of the 2026 fellowship program. And as part of this program, you'll get to know both of us and a lot of sort of how we work in this world and what we bring from both the education and capacity building side and the demonstration side. So I alluded to it earlier, or talked briefly just a few minutes ago, but a little bit more about With Life and what it's all about and how these organizations work together. So essentially, our work is to bring life to organizations, to bring a living systems approach and an approach that's aligned with how living systems work into organizational design, management, and operations. So we do it in two ways. The first way is sort of what I was describing as my primary focus, which is our global platform for capacity building. So that is our global community learning platform where all of our courses and offerings and programs are, where our community is. Um, and that can be everything from self-paced courses to cohort-based courses, short ones, long ones, extensive journeys. This fellowship, which is a year-long journey, we have memberships and we have an active community in this global platform where we're all learning together how to bring a living systems approach into our organizations. And then we have a landscape of local ecosystems for demonstration. That's the demonstration side that Ryan was describing. So this is where we work with organizations directly and or we're embedded and work within organizations to bring this living systems approach forward into the work that they're doing in the world. And the organizations that we work with on the demonstration side are widely varied and across all kinds of sectors, all kinds of different types of organizations and businesses in many different places all over the country and all over the world. So what does that sort of look like in terms of how it's structured? The global community learning platform with all of our courses and programs, we have almost 2,500 people as of this month in our platform, and that is representative of 81 different countries, all participating in our community platform where all of our learning and capacity building activities are taking place. And then, like Ryan said, we have consulting clients. So that's businesses, nonprofits, and community organizations. We work with over 90 clients in 16 different countries, some all over the world. And then we have operating partnerships, which are those deep partnerships where we work within and directly as part of organizations who are really ready to bring a living systems approach into the work that they do. And so we have a group of different partnerships that across sectors, everything from food supply to built environment to education. And we work in different locations deeply with those organizations. And then those organizations work with other organizations. So we're seeing how our impact is nested and growing out into various contexts across the world. So I'll just give you a little bit of a preview in terms of our approach and really what are the foundational pinnings of what do we mean when we say bring a living systems approach to organizations. So essentially, we believe that organizations are complex living systems and they require a very different approach to design, managing, and monitoring. We always start with these three questions. What are you trying to bring into the world? Who shares this passion and purpose with you? And how are you going to work together to achieve this shared purpose? And so the fellowship and all of our courses and capacity building programs are really all about learning to lead with life. And what that means is that our approach holds the patterns of living systems at its foundation. We take a comprehensive view of living systems, science, and everything we know about how life works, and we bring that into patterns that we see in life. And then we align our organizations and our approaches to those patterns. So whether we're working in business, policy, government, community, education, etc., when we align our organizations with how life actually works, we can create healthy, resilient organizations and economies. And why do we do this? Because we know that the dominant model for organizations today is the machine. And it doesn't take much to recognize that everywhere you look, you're seeing all kinds of references to how organizations can run like machines. So, 5 ways to run your company like a well oiled machine, or graphics that show your entire business as a series of cogs in a machine. How even when we talk about processes and people, and when we talk about economics, when we talk about teams, we continue to use this framing of a mechanistic model. And you can see how deeply embedded this model is in the way that we think about organizations. So, how often have you heard phrases like this? We're going to get this company running like a well oiled machine, or I don't have bandwidth for that, or we've got to dial that in, or move the needle, or hit the reset button. So if you think about this mechanistic approach that everything can be predicted and controlled, that everything, all the parts in the machine are replaceable, this has deeply influenced the way that we operate organizations, and we operate them as if they're machines, really aiming for predictability and control. So we in the machine model, we assume that a set of predictable inputs can create a set of predictable outputs. And if any of you have ever worked in any organization ever, you probably know that that is not always or even often the case. And so by restricting ourselves to this machine model, we are really missing out on all kinds of potential. And we think that this really came together and has come to dominate the way we organize and the way we design our organizations, because of these two influences that have come together. First, it's a mechanistic worldview. And second is the desire for cheap labor. So, hundreds of years ago, Newtonian physics gave us all kinds of important and valuable information about how the world around us works. But then we applied Newtonian physics to every single thing everywhere and decided that everything can be predicted and controlled and that everything is a machine. This sort of gave rise to this concept of the whole world and beyond as the clockwork universe. And this is that deeply entrenched mechanistic worldview that has influenced how we work together and how we design our organizations ever since. And then to make that machine work, there's this historical drive for cheap labor. And this drive came around and proliferated through all kinds of atrocities like slavery and the general poor treatment of workers and indentured servitude. And when you're trying to create a machine that is an organization, you're focusing primarily on productivity and efficiency and predictable outcomes. This model drives relentlessly toward efficiency, productivity, and predictability, but it does that at the expense of health and well-being. We even consider people, human people, as parts of this machine. And so, to what end? What are the consequences of leading organizations like machines? This model has actually contributed to all kinds of unwanted and undesired consequences. Interestingly, global employee engagement, as measured by Gallup year after year after year, shows that almost 80% of employees in the global workforce are disengaged at work. So only 23% are truly engaged and thriving in their roles. This lack of engagement in the global workforce costs an estimated $8.8 trillion or 9% of the global GDP. And I always say I'm not sure that there's any machine that I would ever purchase willingly if I knew that it was only running at 20% of its potential capacity. And yet, that's what we've settled for by adopting machine model in organizations that's not deeply engaging our workforce. And now 80% of people are not engaged at work. Not to mention the vast and grotesque economic inequality that we see as part of an outcome of this machine model, where the net worth of certain individuals far exceeds the net worth of whole countries. And then we see inequity, in particular, things like race deeply and profoundly affect how well you're predicted to do in all kinds of areas, from education to health, to jobs, to housing. And then, of course, further out, we also see all kinds of unintended consequences for our planet and for our environment. So we see planetary decline. The Global Living Planet Index shows a staggering 73% decline in populations by 2024, between 1970 and 2020. And so we recognize that this mechanistic model that has all these disastrous consequences for organizations, for people of all, for diverse people and people of all walks of life, that has unintended consequences for our planet and for our environment, that it is actually a model that is in deep contrast to the view of reality that's held by all kinds of philosophical wisdom and spiritual traditions all over the world, for all time. So this particular view is in deep contrast to different religious and philosophical traditions. It's in deep contrast to the way of life of indigenous people in the Americas, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and all over the world. And we've actually at In Rhythm had the great pleasure and honor of working with many different indigenous groups, and can clearly see how this mechanistic design is not cohesive with an indigenous worldview. And yet, it's become so dominant. And it grew to dominate the world through colonialism, through slavery, through systemic racism. It was advanced and reinforced by the Industrial Revolution, by capitalism. And now, hardly any part of the world is untouched by this design and by this model. In fact, many other views and ways of working, being, knowing, doing have been pushed into the background by the dominance of this mechanistic machine model, this culture, and this approach to organizational design. And so we also realize that there are all kinds of different challenges and all kinds of different types of problems in the world. And essentially, machines are really good at managing simplicity and things that are complicated. So things like baking a cake, or even lots of steps involved, something like sending a rocket to space. These are examples of the kinds of problems or challenges that a machine model can actually handle pretty well. But if any of you have ever raised a child or coached a soccer team or managed an organization, you know that many of the issues and challenges and problems that we face in organizations are nothing like baking a cake or even sending a rocket to space. In fact, they're vastly complex. There is no clear, linear, single one way to do it. There's no predictability in what's going to happen next. And there are multiple pathways and multiple approaches that are all context dependent. And so essentially, what we notice is that this machine model that has become so dominant, that has all of these consequences, not only does it not adequately address complexity, we're trying to manage everything as if it is complicated when truly it's complex. But this model was also built to perpetuate inequality. And the good news is that we believe it doesn't need to be this way. We think this is a design problem. And as with any design problem, if it's not working, we can just create a new design. We can generate new outcomes by thinking about it differently, by approaching it differently. We are no more inherently bound to this mechanistic design than we are to see ourselves as merely cogs in a machine. We have this incredible opportunity at any given moment to choose a new design. So we do. And so instead of modeling ourselves and our organizations after machines, we look to life as a model. And we do this because life demonstrates and living systems demonstrate this incredible type of resilience, dynamic adaptation, and emergent outcomes that are unique to living systems. So a minute ago, I said that our approach, or the With Life approach, holds the patterns of living systems at its foundation. So we recognize that there are patterns that are common to all living systems that are particularly relevant to how we might organize with life in mind. And so we're drawing from all these different systemic understandings of living system science to identify that living systems operate and organize themselves according to patterns of holism, patterns of organization, and patterns of relationship. And as part of our capacity building courses and programs and part in the fellowship, our community learns all the time all kinds of different ways to think about these different patterns of how living systems really work in the world and how to apply those patterns to the way that we design, manage, and monitor organizations. So, our definition of life is that life is an organized system capable of maintaining itself within a boundary of its own making. And the process of living itself is actually regenerative, and regenerative is synonymous with living. We can design and redesign as different outcomes emerge and as different priorities shift um, in order to create and maintain the regenerative capacity within our social systems, our organizations, just like life organizes itself and is able to maintain itself within that boundary. So, our approach is really about designing with life in mind. And real briefly, if we think about the contrast between a living systems design approach and a machine design approach, a machine design really engineers this set of best practices. This is how it's always going to work all the time in all the situations. And that enforces this set of very prescriptive structures that ultimately degenerates the health of the system. And that's what we see in all the consequences of this proliferated machine design. Whereas a living systems design is informed by a set of patterns that then facilitates the use and working with flexible frameworks that ultimately regenerates the health in the system. And so in a machine design, we're always constantly needing more and more energy and more external inputs. Whereas in a living systems design, we ultimately require less energy because that system self-maintains. Now, we recognize that shifting from this deeply entrenched machine design or machine model to a living systems view requires a really profound and fundamental shift, not only in our perspective and the way that we think and approach design and challenges, but also in the way that we operate our organizations and businesses. So we've created the living systems framework for organizations that gives us a very flexible framework within which is that boundary of our own making, our own operational identity that is rooted in our foundational beliefs and that is responsive to emergent outcomes. And meanwhile, energy and information are flowing through our organizations as measures of our underlying health. And so we are always creating and recreating this boundary. We have the freedom to create and recreate our organizations, our structures, our priorities in alignment with life and in response to what shows up. And so that's a high level overview of some of the basic foundational beliefs and principles that form the root of the With Life approach to organizations. And our With Life Fellowship deeply works through this framework and all of the real life challenges that you're experiencing in organizations and in social structures. And we work together and learn together how might we apply the wisdom of life um, to all of these realities in our social systems. So I'm going to move now to a little bit more practical um, information about the fellowship itself and really what the fellowship is and what kind of experience you might have as a 2026 With Life Fellow. So I mentioned the With Life Community Learning Platform, and essentially, um, With Life Fellows get year-long access to all of the offerings on that platform from In Rhythm and Capital Institute. Remember, In Rhythm focuses on organizational design, operations, management, and Capital Institute focuses on regenerative economics, finance, and investment. So not only do fellows get access to all of the courses and programs that are offered through those two organizations, In Rhythm and Capital Institute, but also all of our overall With Life community offerings and anything that's new in development throughout the course of the year. So on the With Life side, access to the community platform and a dedicated space for fellows within that platform, monthly webinars and live special events, and opportunities to engage in content from other content partners. We also have self-organizing spaces on our platform that are known as the Ecotone. And those are community created spaces and events where our community just decides, hey, let's get together and talk about this particular thing. So right now we have spaces in our Ecotone where community members are meeting and working and doing work groups together around regenerative marketing or regenerative technology or bioregional projects, AI ethics. And then fellows also get access to live in-person gatherings that are part of our collective membership every year. So we meet from time to time in different geographic locations around the country and the world. And fellows get access to those meetings as well. And then through In Rhythm, we have a series of self-paced courses on leadership and design. We have live redesign studios, which are small sort of half-day offerings where you can bring a design challenge, something that you're working on in your organization. Maybe you want to redesign your compensation structure or your performance reviews, or maybe you want to design your organization from the ground up and you're looking for creating a purpose statement or to recognize how to prioritize the work that's in front of you. You can bring all those challenges to the redesign studios and we'll work through them with you using the living systems approach. We also have a cohort-based course that is our regenerative design lab and two leadership courses that are also cohort-based. One is Lead Thriving Teams, and one is Lead Through Change. So these are two different leadership courses that In Rhythm offers as part of this program. And then Capital Institute offers self-paced courses in regenerative economics and finance, and then a series of cohort-based courses as well. So Introduction to Regenerative Economics is John Fullerton's sort of flagship course in regenerative economics. It's an 8-week course. It's a journey and it's an amazing experience, as well as the finance program where John covers money and banking from a regenerative lens, as well as investment and finance. And then every month, John also engages thought leaders from all over the globe. And those discovery dialogues and this conversations, sort of a fireside chat style, that you also have access to and can and are welcome to join as a fellow. So fellows get to sort of see and do and experience all the different things in our platform. And then they also get to be a part of a curated community that's together all year, where you're having these monthly meetings and engaging with one another throughout the year. And like Ryan talked about, that's really an opportunity to deepen connections and to deepen the network that you're working with. And so the journey is kind of a choose your own adventure. It's kind of a create your own regenerative learning journey. So you have this wide array of different experiences that you can drop into and be a part of throughout the whole year. You have an opportunity to build that network in this curated community of other fellows. Then you also have access to our team where you're experiencing the support of our teams, whether through one-on-ones and guidance and mentoring and the monthly group calls. There's all kinds of ways to engage with those of us who are a part of In Rhythm and Capital Institute and with Life. And then there are those monthly fellowship gatherings and events, as well as community gatherings and events. So for fellows, that monthly call is a required part of the program. That's really how you forge the connections with other fellows and get to know one another and work together, and really start to bring forward and deepen everything that you're learning about and everything that you're exploring in the program itself. So I'm going to hand it over to Ryan real quick, who's going to share some insights as far as who makes a great fellow, who is this program for. So Ryan, I'll turn that over to you to just talk a little bit about your experience, because Ryan's been facilitating the fellowship now for a few years. Who is this program for, and what makes someone a great candidate to be a fellow?
Yeah, so and we actually have some fellows who we're going to hear from here in a few minutes. I'd say they all make great fellows, right? But if you are, aside from the things that are listed here, if you are someone who has experience, deep experience in being able to run organizations, operate organizations, and you really are wanting to begin rethinking how that could be done, this is a great opportunity for you. You'll be surrounded by people who are experienced in doing those things and are similarly thinking through how they can redesign and rethink how they manage and monitor organizations. If you are someone, we often have fellows who are kind of taking a year of life or thinking through, I need to make a significant shift and a significant change. I think that the fellowship is a fantastic arena to be surrounded with people who are thinking of things in brand new ways and are imagining things completely different. A lot of fellows end up in different or complementary career paths after the fellowship because they're inspired to take what they have done and the experience and the skills that they have and transform them in light of what they've learned, and it often takes them in new paths. I would say that you're a great candidate for the fellowship if it is something where you can tell for yourself, I want to have a full year of dedicated time to really dig deep and rethink things and begin applying that into my work. Um, I like to think of it kind of as a long-term or a long distance run. So whether that be a marathon or an ultra, it's the kind of activity that I would say the people who get the most out of the fellowship are people who really are able to identify for themselves something very specific. In the first quarter of the year with the fellowship, what we will be looking to do is help you identify very specifically what is your purpose for being in the fellowship. And we monitor that throughout the year. We ask, what are you intending? What are you hoping out of this season? So that we have very specific growth opportunities and intentions. And I think in a lot of ways throughout the year, that will shift and change as you become aware of new things. But having that intention allows us to think about how we actually come into new seasons and how we design around that. If you are someone who is believing that there is an entirely new way to do things and you are looking for a community of people to come alongside you and give voice to that, you're a good candidate for the fellowship.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Um, and just a fun fact, I was a 2022 in Rhythm Fellow myself, and here I am now today. So I did in fact take a year to rethink. And then I decided that this is the work that I want to do and bring forward in the world. So here I am doing it. So now we'll hear from some of our amazing 2025 fellows who are going to share a little bit about themselves and their experience in the fellowship and why it's been meaningful to them. John Paul, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm happy to go first. Yeah, my name is Jean-Paul Sal. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. And just so you know, quickly, my background is in finance. So for the past 20 odd years, I've worked at a couple of private equity funds and primarily have been working with small startup companies around raising capital, growth, and a lot of M&A. And yeah, I mean, my experience, I have to say that what I got out of the fellowship was not what I thought I was going to get out of it when I decided to join. As somebody in finance and operations, I was thinking like, hey, I'm gonna do this fellowship and I'm gonna walk away with like, the formula, right, for how to run a company in a regenerative fashion. And that is, that's not how it works. And so, for me, the value was, like Ryan was alluding to, like having that entire year to go through all the courses and do the seminars and really, like reframe how I approach business and how I approach organizations. Um, because it really is for me was like a really a massive kind of shift and reframing. And then on top of that, like in some ways, maybe one of the biggest benefits is also the other fellows, right? And so being part of that group of people that are going through this together and meeting on a regular basis and supporting each other through the whole process. And yeah, for the 2025 fellows, right? We're gonna continue to meet, so we really have bonded and really become a support circle for each other. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Thanks, Jean Paul. Lorna, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Um, I'm Lorna. I live in France, in Chamonix, in the Alps. So quite a bit different to a lot of the people on this call. There's quite a lot in the US. I'm actually from the UK. I'm not French, but I live here. So a brief intro to me is for the past 6 years, I've been working as an independent consultant, and I do marketing strategy and organization design for a range of different organizations, from social value to sustainable. And for the last 2 years, I've really been kind of on a deep search for how we can really do some deep systems change. Um, and that led me a year later, through lots and lots of reading and joining various groups, to taking the John Fullerton's Capital Institute Regenerative Economics course a year ago. And as part of that course, I just had the most wonderful transformative experience. And it was not just hearing from John and doing the reading and doing the learning. It was actually the core of the people who I met on the course. I met some wonderful people who I've had some great built some great relationships with over time. And then I started thinking, well, part of my work is not just in strategy, it's in organization design. And wouldn't I love to sort of deep dive into the Rhythm living systems framework? And should I take another course? Should I take Lead Through Change? What should I do? And then I saw this fellowship and I just thought, wow, I mean, if I could get the opportunity to kind of relive what I'd been through with the economics course on a kind of a year-long journey, I just thought it sounded absolutely wonderful. So I applied and I got in, and I can't believe we're nearly over. I can't believe it's almost the end. But as Jean Paul says, we are firm friends behind the scenes, and we're going to be hopefully continuing our fellowship meetings, long into the future. I think, how the fellowship, as Jean Paul has said, the people that you meet on this fellowship and the journey that you go on together is just life-changing for me. I've made some friends on this course that I can imagine that I will have for the rest of my life, even though I've never met them in person. And I live halfway around the world. I mean, last night I had a call with a lady in Australia who's one of my friends now on the fellowship, and we were discussing at length kind of some challenges around bringing a regenerative approach to consulting. And it's really I say I came for the courses and I stayed for the people. And I thought that doing the courses would be like the highlight of the year, and being able to take all these different courses that were, which are all brilliant. But really what stands out for me is the relationships that I've built, the shared learning, like really sitting every month with your fellows in kind of deep kind of trust and honesty about how you're feeling about trying to bring this into the world. So I highly recommend it. And yeah, it's been a really wonderful year.
Thank you, Lorna. Really appreciate it. Ricardo.
Hello, and thank you, Natalie. And if anybody is sitting on the edge and on your seat and wondering, should I say yes or what to do next, let this be another sign from Mother Earth to say yes. My name is Ricardo Victorias, and I have a background in entrepreneurship, event planning, and nonprofit management. And I joined the fellowship to find community and to learn. I'd been working in the regenerative space for years, but had been searching for an easier way to learn both the systems and tools. But I also wanted to learn how to be able to share and apply the learnings to my work and my community. For years, I'd been thinking to myself, wow, there must be a better way of doing business. There must be a better way of inspiring others, and there must be a better way of helping the world come together and build more life together. And the fellowship really gave me that. And with that, a wonderful community where we could learn and also be in a space where we could apply what we're learning in a space to where with community. And I have to say that the teachers as well are a huge part of this. These are the teachers are guides. Not only are they knowledgeable, but they guide us, and they are such a huge support for us as part of this community. And then, of course, the friends that we make and the people that we make are not just friends for this year, but they are becoming friends for life and teachers for life. And so joining the fellowship has been one of the greatest decisions I think I've ever made in my life. And I'm looking forward to seeing others join in on this. And yeah, this is a special place. And yeah, thank you to everyone who made it so special.
Thank you, Ricardo. I was just thinking about kind of the theme, and I think you summed it up really well, Lorna, of some of what you shared, that, you know, you came thinking it was the courses and it was the people, right? You stayed for the people. I mentioned that part of the platform is we have community generated spaces, and there are community generated spaces for the prior fellowship cohorts where they continue to meet. So, you know, every month there's still a meeting of 2024 fellows, for example, right on our platform, because the relationships are longstanding, and I'm, a few years out and still have really strong and amazing relationships with those who were in the 2022 fellowship cohort with me. So that's a real thing. Real quickly, before we wrap up our time together, I just want to walk through some of the details. So the dates of the fellowship, it's all year long in 2026. That's January through December. The key pieces of participation are those monthly calls that are happening on Tuesdays. It's one Tuesday a month. It's 2 p.m. Eastern time is our tentative schedule for that. All the access to all the courses, so dropping in, and we offer all of the courses and programs that I described earlier. We offer them multiple times through the year. So you might decide to focus on Design Lab one month, do economics another month, do leadership another month, or you might decide to do them all in a row and then do the whole thing again for a deeper understanding. So any level of engagement in the courses and programs is welcome from fellows in the fellowship. And then, of course, as our current fellows just described, self-organizing with others and just forming work groups and collaborations and conversations and inevitably friendships through the process. So the program fees, we offer a sliding scale from $1,250, $2,500, and $3,750. Those who opt for the higher levels are actually creating scholarship funds to allow for more broad participation in the fellowship. So if you have questions about that, you can always email us at team@inrhythm.co. And then as far as deadlines and application process, we accept and carefully curate a community of 25 fellows for the year. If you have questions or you're not sure, you're also welcome to email us and set up a one-on-one. We can give you more specific contextual information that's relevant to you and the work that you're doing in the world. Is the fellowship right for you? And there are, multiple programs and offerings in the With Life community. If you decide it's not the fellowship, there are other things. Or if you just want some more specific information that's relevant directly to you, you can always reach out and we're happy to walk you through that. Applications are due December 5th. We'll notify fellows by December 15th, and then you kind of have a week to get yourself enrolled before the end of your holidays on December 19th. And then we start in January. Sorry, it should that all those dates are wrong. So they should all say 25 and 26, but we start in January 2026. And so that's the whole year program. And I think the first fellowship call right now is scheduled for January 13th, just to give you a sense. And there's one every month. So that's pretty much all the information for today. And now I'm happy to open up to questions, any additional information that you want to get while you're here. Any thoughts? Oh, hi, Dawn. Nice to see you.
Hi there.
Sure. What's your question?
Yeah, I'd like a composite answer from the three people who are the current on the list currently. Maybe yourself, Natalie. If you now that you're at the tail end of the process, the year process, what would you do differently if you were to do it again? Now that you've got to the end of it, considering the amount of information and what you have taken on board, um, in order to be able to get to a new level altogether.
I can respond to that, Natalie. Um,
Sure.
in my case, I wouldn't do anything differently, but I'll say something that I did that I think was important for me, which is that even though I had like a whole year and the fellowship, you have regularly scheduled monthly meetings, like I took all the courses as soon as I could, right? So I didn't say like, oh, I have a whole year, so let me spread them out. And I guess, the first time that each course was offered or workshop, like I tried to take it, my schedule allowed for that. I found that really helpful because it meant that, I went through the coursework and the education with Natalie and Ryan, um, and then had time with the fellows and with the teachers and the guides to like help process it and figure out like how to apply it. Um, so for me that was really important, and I would guess that if I did the fellowship and had left some of the coursework for the end, that I would be left feeling like, oh, now that I've learned this, like I need more help processing or have questions, and I would feel like I should have done this earlier.
Mm. Yeah, I would agree with that, Jean-Paul, that it's great to take it again in the later part of the year, but it is really one of the advantages of the fellowship is the unlimited access. So if for some reason you had a conflict and couldn't take everything early, it's always available. But there's that it's through the community that a lot of integration is happening. So I think that's an insightful comment for sure.
Yeah, I can add something.
Sure.
I mean, I think as someone who's based on a different time zone, it is a little bit more challenging, and I know that my peers who are being based in Australia, for example, the time zone can be quite challenging. Now, I think I was very committed to this fellowship. I got a lot out of it. As I'm based in Europe, it's evening time for me. The duration of this call has gone from like sunset to dark outside. And a lot of the core courses are in the early evening for this time zone. So I would really, make sure that you can handle that, and that fits with your lifestyle and your commitments. And that's an important thing to bear in mind. Unlike Jean-Paul, I spread mine out across the year for that reason, and that worked fine. I mean, I would say I did most of it in the first 2/3, and then kind of dipped back in again to the regen economics at the same, like almost like a year later, just to sort of like a refresh. I would say also like be willing to commit to those fellowship calls outside of the courses. I think they're so important, and we've got so much out of them. the people who show up regularly each month, like really, I think we've got so much out of just learning from each other, and supporting each other. So yeah, I think just showing up is super important in that context. That's all I would add, really.
Thank you. Justin.
Hey, yeah, thank you for the presentation. My name is Justin. I yeah, I've been kind of working in like the regenerative, I guess, economic field for like the last few years and have taken part in some fellowships. And I guess I was wondering, like, when I look at the nature of the content and the fellowship program, it seems like maybe there's an orientation toward people who have who are used to like a more traditional style of business and who are looking to kind of step into understanding what regenerative practices may be in their current professional context. But is it also a valuable program for people who are more in like a early stage startup or venture phase who are looking at how to take I have like some like social technologies and programs and processes we've been running that are very regenerative in nature, but have had a hard time grounding them into like strong financial or economic models that are sustainable. And so I wanted to better understand how this type of coursework or fellowship would help translate like regenerative practices or lifestyles or even social tech into sustainable businesses and ventures. And this is kind of the right pathway for that. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
That's a great question. Ryan, I'd love to hear
Yeah,
your
I've
thoughts.
had
I
a
have a couple thoughts
number
too.
of fellows over the years who've had a great amount of just value out of coming in an early stage, whether that's startup or being an entrepreneur, or even just some people come in and use the year to fill out their design of the work that they want to do. We've had several fellows who've done that. And we had others who really just, to your point, already had something going and allowed this to be a process of using their not only what they're learning in the programs, but more importantly, the relationship you get with the other fellows. I think a lot of the value, especially for a startup, is being surrounded by other thinkers who are really exploring how this shows up in a variety of different contexts. It's one of the best things about this fellowship is the diversity of people that show up and the ability to share ideas and explore ideas that you otherwise had not thought of.
Yeah. So one of the great joys of my role on the With Life platform is how many different conversations I get to have with people who are engaged in our courses and programs all year long. I'm just constantly talking to everyone in our community every day. And there is a high percentage of conversations that I have that are people, even if they have a sort of traditional role in an organization, a lot of people are also working on forming. There are so many entrepreneurs in our community who are working on forming new organizations, joining with other organizations. There's a woman in our leadership courses that are active right now who has created an entirely new entity structure in her country because the current entity structures didn't give nature a voice. And so she created a new structure, working with legal experts in order to be able to form an organization. So I think it's important that in as with living systems, so much of this is what you're bringing to it and it's contextual. It's what you're making from it. So I would not describe any of the courses. I think Introduction to Regenerative Economics is incredibly accessible no matter whether you know anything about economic, like macroeconomics or not, whether you know that's your course of study or your field. And I think all the courses are accessible on the In Rhythm side from design and leadership, but I wouldn't say they are entry level, high level overviews of a living systems approach and sort of leave it at that. I would say all of the courses start in an accessible way and go deep. They're challenging you to do some real work in terms of real design work. What would it look like to actually bring this forward into my role, my organization? Um, we actually have a group that formed in our community about regenerative approaches to family. And what is it like to bring this worldview or this thought process into how we engage and interact with our families and our communities? We have community developers, we have nonprofit organizations, we have networks of organizations, we have solopreneurs. So I don't think there's any type of, it's certainly not exclusive to beginners in a regenerative approach, and it's also not exclusive to folks who've been doing this for a long time. When I came into In Rhythm, I had been in the regenerative space for a handful of years already. And so what initially felt really affirming and validating to me in Rhythm's content gave me language to describe a lot of what I was already doing. But then it also challenged me to really deepen it and apply it in ways I hadn't ever thought of before. Lavana?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Um, I'm calling in because I love the idea of this program. I'm curious if anyone has past experience applying this in a context of a very small business. I operate in the manufacturing space. We provide a manufacturing service of sorts and in a highly regulated market. And I was curious to know what as small as 8 people. And so I was wondering how this would apply to someone like me, where I'm chef to dishwasher in the sense fairly active inside the business, in the operations, but at the same time, I have an interest in moving it maybe away from the traditional small business model in America. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Ryan, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we've had such a variety of folks who've engaged in the fellowship, and I wouldn't say that it is specific to any specific role that you currently have. One of the things that I believe any of the fellows, and maybe one or two, three of you could speak to this, but one of the things that I would say you'll find in the fellowship is that what you are learning permeates all aspects of life. We talk a lot about organizational management, but ultimately, any area you are experiencing a complex relationship. So, any human relationship you have, any relationship with any living thing is going to be affected by what you learn and understand. So, really, no matter where you're at in an organization, no matter where you're at in some of the things that you are hoping out of life, the things that you're going to learn are going to allow you to view life differently and begin engaging in all environments differently. So whether it is somebody who says, hey, there's just one specific area of an organization that I'm currently involved in, I've seen lots of fellows who've learned how to use what they are understanding, review, seeing life differently, and begin applying it to their business, even if they're not, say, the top decision maker in that organization. We've seen it work equally as helpful in very small organizations and large organizations. Because ultimately, what we're talking about is how we engage in the complexity of life in cooperation with living systems patterns.
Um, Something that I would offer to those of you who have additional questions, is our community, the actual learning platform where a lot of this is happening, is 100% free to join. So if you have curiosity and you're thinking, I don't know if this is exactly right for me, if this is the right space for me, you can just join our free community and check it out. You'll be able to see some of the conversations and spaces. You won't have access to all the courses and content, of course, but you will have access to sort of check out with life and what it's all about. And that might be another great entry point. So I just put the link in the chat. For those of you, there's a button at the top of that page that says join our community. So if you're curious about that, that's another way just to learn a little bit more. And then the other thing is I'll put in the chat as we're kind of ending our time is that you can always reach out to us at team@inrhythm.co. And if you have any questions that didn't get answered today in the chat, I know there's a couple that we probably won't have time to go into detail. Feel free to send us an email, set up a one-on-one. We can talk more. We're happy to do that. That's part of what we do is to engage with people in our community, answer your questions, talk you through it, and help you decide if this is the right program for you, and or if there's any other opportunities or offerings that we have on our platform that might be even a better fit for you. So just open that up, please. Grab those links or emails and send us a message. I think that is about all we have time for today. I'm very grateful and really appreciative of all of you who came and stayed and even stuck out a couple minutes after the hour. Really great to see you and hope to hear from you all soon.